Have you ever been the disappointment in your own family, the one they whisper about at dinner, but never truly see? I'm Lauren Morse, 30 years old, born and raised in Mon, Georgia, a place that taught me how painful love can feel when it comes with conditions. From the outside, my family looked perfect: two loving parents, a bright son, and a quiet daughter who never quite fit their mold. That daughter was me. While my brother Evan was celebrated like a golden child, I became the shadow, the stubborn one, the one who never did enough, never was enough. Every achievement of mine was met with silence, every mistake magnified. I learned early that in my home, love was measured by success, and success had Evan's name on it. But what my family didn't know was that the girl they dismissed would one day uncover the truth that shattered their perfect illusion. When I turned 18, I thought college would be my chance to finally step out of my brother's shadow. I wanted to study data analytics, something I'd fallen in love with back in high school, when a teacher showed me how numbers could tell stories real, human stories hidden in patterns and graphs. But in my house, dreams didn't matter unless they fit the mold my parents approved of. I still remember that afternoon in our kitchen in Mon, Georgia. The air smelled faintly of my mom's coffee and lemon cleaner. I was holding my acceptance letter from the University of North Georgia, my hands trembling a little with excitement. "I got in," I said softly, sliding the envelope across the table. My dad didn't even glance up from his newspaper. "Data analytics?" he muttered. "That's not a real job, Lauren. You'll end up broke." My mom didn't look much kinder. She stirred her coffee slowly, her gold bracelet clinking against the cup. "Why can't you pick something stable like your brother? Evan's studying business. He's setting himself up for life." Evan, lounging on the couch behind me, smirked without looking up from his phone. "Stick to something practical, sis," he said. "The world doesn't need another dreamer crunching numbers." Their words hit harder than they should have. I wanted to yell, to tell them that data was the future, that people built entire industries on understanding information. But I didn't. I just nodded and folded the letter back into its envelope, pretending it didn't matter. That night, lying awake in my small, poster-covered bedroom, I promised myself one thing. If my family wouldn't believe in me, I'd believe in myself. I wasn't going to beg for support or validation. I'd find a way to make it work on my own. So I did. While Evan got a new laptop and a used car for college, I took a part-time job at a used bookstore downtown. It wasn't glamorous, dusty shelves, customers who barely noticed me, but it gave me enough to pay for tuition and books. During slow evenings, I'd sneak behind the counter with my laptop, building spreadsheets for the store's inventory system just to practice. My boss noticed and asked if I could help track sales trends. That small task grew into something more, my first taste of what real data work felt like. At home, though, none of it mattered. My dad called my degree a waste of time. My mom referred to it as Lauren's little computer hobby. Whenever Evan came home from Georgia State, it was a family event. He'd talk about business deals and networking, and my parents would hang on every word like he was lecturing at Harvard. When I tried to share something about my classes, a project, a paper, anything, they'd interrupt with a joke or change the subject. One night during dinner, I mentioned that my professor had offered me a small research position analyzing consumer behavior. It was my first paid opportunity in the field. Before I could even finish, my dad cut me off. "That's nice," he said, waving his fork dismissively. "But it's not exactly the kind of job that builds a career." Evan chuckled and said, "Guess someone's gotta count the beans." The table erupted in laughter except for me. I just stared at my plate, pushing the green beans around as heat rose behind my eyes. It wasn't just the ridicule. It was the absence of acknowledgement that hurt the most. I could have discovered a new planet, and my mom would have still asked if Evan needed more gas money. When tuition bills came due, I realized my parents weren't planning to help at all. I overheard them one night in the living room. "We'll cover Evan's," my dad said firmly. "He's got real potential." "And Lauren?" my mom asked. "She's independent," he replied. "She'll figure it out." That word, independent, stuck in my mind like a splinter. It wasn't a compliment. It was a dismissal. I did figure it out, but not the way they expected. I applied for scholarships, stayed up until 2 a.m. coding for freelance gigs, and sometimes skipped meals to save money. I learned how to stretch $20 over a week, My professors saw my effort and pushed me harder, recommending me for internships. Slowly, I built a small reputation as the student who could turn chaos into clarity through data. By graduation, I had no debt and a job offer waiting in Omaha, Nebraska. My parents didn't come to my ceremony. Evan had a big client meeting, and my mom said she didn't want to drive 8 hours for a small town event. That should have broken me. But as I walked across the stage in my navy gown, hearing my name echo in the auditorium, I felt something I'd never felt before: pride that didn't need an audience. Moving to Omaha was the best decision I ever made. The city felt clean and full of possibility. My first job at a marketing firm wasn't perfect. I was one of the youngest analysts on the team, but I thrived. The first time my report boosted a campaign's sales by 30%, my boss called me into his office just to shake my hand. "You've got a gift," he said. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Those words meant more to me than anything my parents had ever said. Every paycheck, every successful project, every late night staring at glowing spreadsheets reminded me that I'd done this alone. No loans, no handouts, no applause. Meanwhile, Evan's updates filtered through family calls. He was killing it in real estate, according to my mom. "Your brother just closed another deal," she'd brag over the phone. "You should learn a thing or two from him." I smiled through her calls, biting my tongue. But deep down, something didn't add up. Evan always had a new car, a new watch, a new story about a deal about to close. But his tone carried a strain I recognized, the kind people have when they're barely holding things together. Still, I stayed quiet. I focused on my life, my progress, my peace. Years later, when my salary finally hit 6 figures, I sent my parents an email, short, polite, hopeful. I attached a photo from my company's conference in Chicago, where I'd given a talk on data-driven marketing strategies. "Thought you'd like to see this," I wrote. My mom's reply came an hour later. "That's nice, but have you talked to your brother lately?" I stared at that sentence for a long time. Then I closed the laptop. That was the moment I truly understood what family blindness meant. No matter what I achieved, they would only ever see Evan. I wasn't angry anymore, just tired. But I also knew something they didn't. The truth always surfaces, and the pedestal they'd built for him was already cracking. And when it did, when the mask finally slipped, they'd see that the daughter they'd dismissed had been the strong one all along. Triển khai ý thứ ba, 850 từ. ChatGPT đã nói, success didn't come overnight. It came in quiet, exhausting steps, the kind no one claps for. In Omaha, I rented a tiny one-bedroom apartment overlooking a parking lot. The carpet was worn, the heater clanged like an old engine, and the only decoration was a small whiteboard where I wrote my goals in thick blue marker. Learn, grow, prove them wrong. At first, my job as a junior data analyst felt overwhelming. The firm was fast-paced, competitive, full of people who seemed sharper, louder, more confident. But numbers were my language. They didn't gossip. They didn't compare. They just told the truth. I stayed late every night, analyzing client reports, finding errors no one else noticed, and quietly fixing them before deadlines. One night, around 10:30, my manager, Daniel Harris, walked past my desk. "You're still here?" he asked. I looked up, smiling sheepishly. "Just wanted to make sure this report runs smoothly." He paused, scanning the charts on my screen. "You just saved us about $50,000 in ad spend," he said. "You caught a mistake everyone else missed." That was the first time someone in authority saw me for my work. Not because of family connections, not because I was someone's daughter or sister, just me. Over the next 2 years, Daniel became both a mentor and a believer. He taught me how to turn raw data into stories executives could understand, how to make numbers emotional. Under his guidance, I climbed quickly from junior analyst to senior data analyst, with a salary that shocked even me. When the HR department sent my new contract, I just stared at the screen for a long moment. $120,000 per year, plus performance bonuses. It wasn't just about the money. It was about what it represented: independence, validation, freedom. That weekend, I treated myself for the first time in years. I bought a small gold bracelet, nothing flashy, but enough to remind me that I'd earned every ounce of it. Then came the part I didn't expect: silence from my family. When I called to share the good news, my mother sounded distracted. "That's nice," she said. "But your brother just got approved for another investment property. You should call and congratulate him." My father added, "Don't forget where you came from, Lauren. Money isn't everything." The irony almost made me laugh. I had built myself from the ground up without a cent from them, and now they were warning me not to be too proud. But I didn't argue. I just said, "Of course," and hung up. Still, something shifted inside me after that. Their approval no longer felt necessary. I didn't need their validation, just the peace of knowing I'd done what they thought I couldn't. Work became my world. I spent my days buried in spreadsheets, analytics dashboards, and client calls, and my nights walking along the quiet streets of downtown Omaha with a cup of hot tea in hand. I had colleagues who respected me, a cozy apartment, and a sense of calm I'd never had before. But even peace can be fragile. One evening, my phone buzzed with a message from Evan. "Hey sis, long time no talk. How's life in the cornfields?" I hadn't heard from him in nearly a year. Something about the message felt off, casual, forced. Still, I replied politely, asking how he was. "Oh, business is crazy," he said. "I've been investing big lately. Actually thinking about expanding out of state. Might come visit sometime." I smiled at the irony. Evan, the golden son, talking about success like it was his birthright. I wanted to believe him, but the way he kept dodging specifics made me wonder. A few weeks later, my mom called. Her voice trembled slightly. "Lauren, your brother's had some setbacks," she said. "Nothing serious, just some temporary cash flow issues. You know how business can be." I said nothing. Then she added, almost pleading, "Your father and I are helping him cover some of the costs. Family supports family." I wanted to ask supports, or saves, but I stayed silent. I'd learned that truth doesn't need to be forced. It reveals itself. Months passed. My career soared. I led a project that helped a major retail client recover from a data breach, earning a company-wide award for outstanding contribution. I was even featured in a local business magazine under the headline, "The Analyst Who Turned Chaos into Clarity." My coworkers celebrated with champagne. My parents didn't mention it once. Still, the calls from home grew more frequent and more desperate. Evan had another deal fall through. The market was unfair. Then came the subtle hints. "Lauren," my father said one evening, "you're doing so well for yourself. Maybe you could loan your brother a small amount just until he gets back on his feet." That was when the truth hit me like cold water. The pedestal was cracking. I asked calmly, "How much?" There was a pause. Then my father said quietly, 70,000. I nearly dropped the phone. $70,000 more than my first year's salary. More than I'd ever had in savings. I couldn't even process it. "Dad," I said slowly, "you're telling me Evan, the family success story, needs $70,000. Don't exaggerate," he snapped. "It's just a rough patch. We've already covered some of it, but your mother and I had to take out a small loan." I closed my eyes. For the first time in years, I felt that same ache I'd carried as a teenager, the ache of realizing I'd never been enough for them. Yet somehow, I was expected to clean up the mess their favorite had made. That night, I didn't sleep. I opened my laptop, logged into a public records database, and began searching. Real estate transactions, tax filings, business registrations, every trail Evan had ever left behind. And what I found confirmed everything I'd suspected. Failed investments, defaulted loans, properties bought and flipped under shell companies that no longer existed. He wasn't a successful businessman. He was a man drowning in debt and pretending to swim. For years, my parents had protected him, covering his losses, lying to friends and family, all while preaching to me about responsibility. The irony was almost poetic. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen filled with numbers, not data this time, but truth. Cold, undeniable, and sharp enough to cut through years of lies. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt sad. Not for him, but for the girl I once was. The one who begged for their pride, who believed love could be earned through achievement. I closed my laptop and whispered to the empty room, "It's time they saw the truth." That was the night I began planning. Not for revenge, but for revelation. The next family gathering was coming soon. My parents' 30th wedding anniversary, a grand event they'd been planning for months. A perfect celebration of their picture-perfect family. Little did they know, their perfect picture was about to be shattered by the daughter they'd spent a lifetime ignoring. The invitation arrived in a gold envelope, embossed with elegant cursive. Join us in celebrating 30 years of love and family. I stared at it for a long time, the irony almost making me laugh. Love and family, the two things that had always felt conditional in our house. Still, I RSVP'd, yes. Not because I wanted to celebrate them, but because I needed to end something that had been festering for years. For weeks, I prepared quietly. I wasn't planning chaos. I wasn't plotting revenge. What I wanted was truth, a truth that had been buried beneath layers of favoritism, pride, and denial. I gathered everything I needed: public documents, debt records, proof of loans, under my parents' names, even screenshots from Evan's failed real estate ventures. Every detail carefully printed and organized in a sleek black folder. Numbers, signatures, timestamps, cold, factual truth. The night of the party came faster than I expected. It was held at the country club, the same one my parents had been members of for years, the one they used to tell me I'd never fit into. The parking lot was lined with luxury cars, and the entrance glowed under soft chandeliers. As I walked in, I caught my reflection in the glass doors. Navy dress, neat bun, simple gold bracelet, the one I'd bought to remind myself of how far I'd come. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like an outsider. Inside, laughter filled the air. My parents were surrounded by friends and relatives, smiling proudly as they accepted compliments. Evan stood near the bar, wearing an expensive suit that probably wasn't paid for. When he saw me, his grin faltered. "Well, look who decided to show up," he said. "The independent sister." "Wouldn't miss it," I replied, smiling thinly. My mother soon spotted me and rushed over, her perfume heavy and familiar. "Lauren, darling, I'm so glad you made it. You look professional." She said the last word like it was both compliment and critique. "Thanks, Mom," I said evenly. "Congratulations on 30 years," she beamed. "Thank you, sweetheart. You know, your brother's been helping us plan everything. He's really done so well for himself." There it was again, the golden child narrative. I just nodded, biting back a dozen responses. As the evening went on, the speeches began. My father took the stage first, thanking everyone for coming, and praising my mother for her loyalty and grace. Then, as expected, he turned the spotlight toward Evan. "And of course," he said proudly, "we couldn't be prouder of our son, Evan, a true example of hard work and success. He's carrying the Morse name forward with pride." Applause filled the room. Cameras flashed. My mother wiped away fake tears. Then my father glanced toward me briefly and added, almost as an afterthought, "And our daughter Lauren, she's doing some kind of work with computers now, I think. We're proud of her too." Laughter rippled softly through the crowd. It was meant to be harmless, but it wasn't. Not after years of being treated as an afterthought. I felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not even humiliation, just clarity. When the applause faded and the MC invited anyone else to speak, I stood up. Chairs turned. Conversation stopped. I walked to the stage, heels clicking against the marble floor. My parents looked confused, Evan visibly tense. I took the microphone and smiled. "I just wanted to say a few words," I began, voice calm and steady. 30 years of marriage is an incredible milestone, one that deserves honesty, love, and most importantly, truth. The room went quiet. "For a long time, I believed I wasn't enough for this family," I continued. "I thought success was something I had to earn to be seen. But the truth is, I wasn't the one who failed." Evan shifted uneasily. My father's jaw tightened. I turned toward the audience, holding up my folder. "Since I work with data, I deal in facts. Numbers don't lie. And these numbers tell a story that's been hidden for too long." A murmur spread through the crowd. My mother whispered, "Lauren, what are you doing?" I ignored her and opened the folder. For the past few years, my brother Evan has been praised as the pride of the Morse family. But what many of you don't know is that behind those business ventures he boasts about, There are failed investments, unpaid debts, and loans taken out in our parents' names, totaling over $70,000. Gasps. Silence. My father stood halfway up. That's enough, Lauren. I looked directly at him. No, Dad, it's not enough. Not when you spent years tearing me down while covering his mistakes. You said I'd end up broke chasing a dream, but here I am, debt-free, successful, and standing on my own 2 feet. Meanwhile, the perfect son is bankrupt, and you've been paying the price. Evan finally snapped. You don't know what you're talking about, he shouted, face flushed. I met his gaze. I do, actually. Public records don't lie. The crowd began whispering relatives, family friends, even my parents' church acquaintances. The room buzzed with disbelief. My mother's face had gone pale. Lauren, please, you're embarrassing us. Maybe, I said softly. But the truth shouldn't be embarrassing unless you've been hiding it. I placed the folder on the table beside the cake gold, and perfect, just like the image they'd tried to project. This is the family you've built, I said quietly. One built on lies, appearances, and favoritism, and I'm done pretending it's something worth celebrating. Ew. Then I handed the microphone back to the MC and walked off the stage. No one stopped me. Not even my parents. Outside, the night air was cold and quiet. I stood under the parking lot lights, breathing deeply. My heart was pounding, but not from fear, from release. Years of silence had finally broken. Through the window, I saw chaos unraveling inside, people arguing. Evan gesturing wildly, my mother crying. For once, none of it felt like my responsibility. I got into my car, turned the key, and drove away past the glowing lights of the country club, past the ghosts of who I'd been. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't gloat. I just sat in my apartment later, sipping tea, staring at the quiet city outside my window. For the first time, I felt free, not because I'd exposed them, but because I'd stopped carrying their judgment like a weight around my neck. They had spent years building their illusion. All I did was turn on the light, and once the light's on, there's no going back to the dark. The fallout came faster than I expected. By the next morning, my phone was flooded with calls, dozens of missed ones from my mother, my father, and even a few relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. I didn't answer a single one. My voicemail overflowed with messages that started angry, then turned pleading, then furious again. Lauren, how could you humiliate us like that? My father's voice thundered in one of them. Do you have any idea what people are saying? My mother's came next, shaky and tearful. Sweetheart, you've misunderstood everything. Evan just needed help. You didn't have to make it public. But I didn't misunderstand. For the first time in my life, I saw them clearly, not as parents, but as people who valued image more than honesty. By noon, the family WhatsApp group was in chaos. My aunt from Florida texted, "Is it true Evan owes $70,000? While another relative chimed in, "Your daughter embarrassed you in front of the whole town." My mother tried to defend Evan, but the screenshots and records I'd left behind had already circulated. There was no putting the genie back in the bottle. That night, I muted the group and went for a walk through the quiet streets of Omaha. The air was crisp, the kind that clears your head. I wasn't proud of what I'd done, but I wasn't ashamed either. Truth isn't always gentle. Sometimes it has to break things open before they can heal. A few days later, my father finally reached me. His voice was low, tired, the sound of someone who'd run out of lies to tell. "Lauren," he said, "we're disappointed in how you handled things." "I know," I replied simply. He hesitated. "Your mother hasn't stopped crying. And Evan, well, he's having a hard time. You could have ruined his career." Whoa. I took a deep breath. "Dad, he ruined it himself. I just stopped pretending." There was silence. Then, almost reluctantly, he said, "You were right about some things. But family sticks together." I laughed quietly. Family also tells the truth. He didn't respond. The call ended with a strained goodbye, and I knew something fundamental had shifted. For weeks after, the Morse name, once synonymous with respectable family in Mon, Georgia, became a whisper. My parents' friends stopped inviting them to events. Evan's business partners backed away one by one. Their perfect image had cracked, and beneath it there was nothing left to hide behind. I heard through a mutual acquaintance that my parents had to sell their vacation cabin to cover the remainder of Evan's debts. The bank repossessed one of his properties, and his reputation as a real estate visionary vanished overnight. Part of me thought I'd feel satisfaction, a sense of poetic justice. But what I felt instead was relief. For years, I'd carried the invisible burden of being the disappointment. Every sigh, every backhanded comment, every family dinner where my success was treated like a footnote, it had weighed me down. Now the truth was out, and I realized I didn't need revenge. I just needed peace. One evening, I got a letter, a real handwritten letter, not an email from my mother. The envelope was pale pink, the handwriting shaky. Lauren, I don't know where to start. The house is quiet now. Your father doesn't talk much. Evan barely calls. I keep thinking about that night. Maybe we were wrong. Maybe we made you feel less than you are. I never meant for that. You've always been strong, too strong, maybe. I just wish things hadn't ended this way. Love, Mom. I read it twice, tears blurring the ink. It wasn't an apology. Not really, but it was the closest she'd ever come to one. Still, I didn't reply. Not out of bitterness, but because I didn't know what to say. Some wounds don't heal with words. They heal with distance. Over time, life settled back into rhythm. Work thrived. I got promoted again, this time to lead data strategist. I bought my first house, a cozy townhouse with big windows and soft light that spilled across the living room every morning. Sometimes I'd sit by the window with my laptop, sipping coffee, watching the city wake up. I'd think about how far I'd come from the girl who once begged for validation to the woman who no longer needed it. And yet, even in that peace, echoes of the past lingered. One night, Evan called. His voice was quiet, almost unfamiliar. I guess you're happy now, he said bitterly. I'm content, I answered carefully. Not happy about what happened, but I don't regret telling the truth. Quote. He laughed dryly. You think you're better than me, don't you? No, I said softly. Just freer. He hung up without another word. I stared at my phone for a while, realizing that for the first time his anger didn't touch me. Months later, I got another message, this time from my father. It was short. Your mother isn't well. She misses you. I read it, but I didn't go back. Not out of cruelty, but self-preservation. I'd spent too many years trying to earn a place in a house that was never meant to feel like home. Now, home was something I built for myself. Every so often, I still think about that night, the lights, the silence after my speech, the look on my parents' faces when the illusion shattered. Some would call it betrayal. I call it liberation. Because betrayal doesn't always come from lies, sometimes it comes from silence. And I had been silent long enough. The truth didn't destroy my family. It exposed what was already broken. And as strange as it sounds, I'm grateful. Because from that wreckage, I finally found something real, not the love I wanted, but the strength I needed. I learned that family isn't defined by blood or last names. It's defined by respect, by honesty, by people who see your worth without needing proof. For 30 years, my parents celebrated a version of love and family that was built on pretense. On their anniversary night, I simply replaced their illusion with reality. And now, when I look at my reflection calm, independent, unapologetically myself, I realize something beautiful. I didn't lose a family that night. I finally let go of the illusion of one. And in its place, I found peace, the kind that doesn't need anyone's permission to exist. ChatGPT Darnoi. It's been 3 years since that night, the night everything fell apart. Sometimes it still plays in my head like a movie. The golden lights of the country club, my mother's trembling hands, my father's pale fury, Evan's stunned silence. The moment when truth, raw and unfiltered, finally replaced decades of lies. Afterward, life didn't change overnight. It shifted slowly, like seasons. The first months were quiet, almost unnervingly so. I stopped hearing from most of my relatives altogether. To them, I was the one who had gone too far. I became the family's whispered scandal, the daughter who ruined her parents' anniversary. But while they gossiped, I kept building. Work became my sanctuary. Data didn't judge. It didn't take sides. It rewarded effort, precision, and honesty, three things my family never valued. But my career did. In time, I got promoted again, director of analytics at one of Omaha's fastest growing firms. My team respected me. My name carried weight, and my work was finally my own. One Friday afternoon, I stood in a glass conference room, overlooking the skyline, presenting a campaign report to the CEO. When I finished, he smiled and said, "Lauren, you've built something extraordinary here." And for the first time, I believed it. That night, I celebrated quietly, not with champagne or a crowd,